Hi, and welcome to Teaching Tip Tuesday, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning at UWSP. We all know that when done well, group work promotes deeper learning, persistence, and real-world skills. But the real key lies in how we set students up for success. Planning group work in advance is essential to making group work effective. Having a good project is the easiest part of that. Today, I want to give you some suggestions for how you can plan to set students up for success and help them get the most from group work by discussing how to form groups, what training students need to succeed in groups, how to manage group progress and conflict, and how to evaluate student performance. How you form groups impacts everything that follows. Although letting students choose their own groups is convenient, it often reinforces social silos and unequal participation. Research consistently shows that heterogeneous instructor-assigned groups tend to be more effective, especially when diversity of background, experience, or skill is factored in. These types of structured groups are better for learning than unstructured group. Most research suggests that 3 to 5 students is the sweet spot for group size. 3 can be too small for complex tasks or if someone drops the course, but more than 5 often leads to freeloading or splintering. You want enough diversity to provide for various types of thought and a division of labor, but not so many voices that participation becomes uneven. After considering group size, you need to consider the diversity of students in a group. Heterogeneous groups are robustly supported in the research, but various types of student diversity present different challenges for group work. It's important for instructors to be aware of these diversity challenges when constructing their groups. We'll look at diversity in skill level, gender, race or ethnicity, and firstborn generation students. But remember that each student has a complex identity based on numerous intersections of all this stuff. First, let's consider diversity in student skill levels. Research in educational psychology and pedagogy supports mixing students of different abilities or achievement levels. Lower achieving students benefit the most from group work. Studies show that they often demonstrate greater conceptual gains, especially in structured, collaborative tasks. This may be because of exposure to more advanced thinking, vocabulary, and problem-solving strategies. Vygotsky's zone of proximal development also suggests that they learn best when guided by more capable peers. Middle-achieving students also benefit from group work. They reinforce their own understanding by explaining what they know to peers. And they may act as bridges between low and high-achieving members of the group, improving the overall communication and cohesion of the unit. High-achieving students can also benefit in mixed-skill groups, but only under certain conditions. If high performers are tasked with simply tutoring their peers without a challenge for them to accomplish, they can become disengaged or frustrated. However, when the task is sufficiently complex, that requires input from all group members, the high-achieving students often develop metacognitive skills, leadership, and deeper conceptual clarity through teaching to others. Consider using brief surveys about students' schedules, skills, or goals to help build balanced, diverse teams. Next, let's consider gender. Gender dynamics in college group work have been studied across disciplines, and research consistently shows that gender affects the experience of students in groups. These effects are shaped by both implicit bias and group structure, and they can have real consequences for learning, confidence, and future engagement. Most research involves heteronormative gender dichotomies, but I'll throw in the limited info on LGBTQIA folks too. First, there's a gendered difference in participation and speaking time. Women and LGBTQIA+ people tend to participate less than men in mixed gender groups, especially in unstructured, heteronormative, or competitive settings. There's a difference in influence and perception. Men's ideas are often taken more seriously, even when the contributions are similar in quality to other members of the group. Men are often perceived as more competent in domains culturally associated with masculinity, for example, math, science, and engineering, which can lead to women's ideas being undervalued in group work. There are gendered differences in self-efficacy and role adoption. Women in mixed-gendered groups are more likely to take on supportive or peripheral roles, such as note-taking or organizing, rather than technical or leadership roles. This can reinforce gendered expectations and lower self-efficacy. Men are more likely to take leadership roles and to assume technical responsibilities. Group gender composition matters. Gender-balanced or women-majority groups tend to reduce participation gaps and improve outcomes for women and improve women's sense of belonging and participation, especially in male-dominated majors. This is obviously a balancing act, since students in some disciplines are still predominantly men, and there's a conflict between putting more women in a group to improve their experience and preparing the women for a gender-imbalanced workplace. Now let's consider racial and ethnic diversity. In general, group work aligns with the more socially connected and community-oriented mindsets of many minoritized communities, which means that students in these groups can benefit greatly from group work. However, students with such identities face different challenges in the context of group work, including underrepresentation and tokenism, that is, being the only student of color in a group. This can lead to reduced participation, greater anxiety, and feelings of being unheard or undervalued. Minoritized students often report having to prove their competence more than their non-minoritized peers, especially in STEM or competitive academic environments. This may be the result of unconscious bias and stereotype threat. Finally, let's consider first-generation and low-income students. These students may feel less confident in group discussions or are unfamiliar with the unspoken academic norms associated with such discussions. In unstructured groups, they may participate less and defer to students from more privileged backgrounds or take on more passive roles. The take-home message here is that as an instructor, you should try to ensure a heterogeneous group composition and be aware of the likely challenges that students with marginalized or minoritized identities may encounter in group work that are not related to the activity itself. In addition to deliberately structuring group composition, it's important to consider training the students for collaboration. You shouldn't assume that they know how. So before jumping into group work, it helps to provide explicit training in key collaborative competencies. These have been shown to help mitigate the challenges presented to the various groups of students that I just talked about. Here are 4 of the most valuable. First, communication skills. Providing students with guidance on how to communicate with peers helps to promote positive group dynamics. Some areas you might want to focus on are active listening, in which you teach students to paraphrase what others say before they respond. This ensures that students are being heard and reduces misunderstandings. It also helps to build trust. Next, you might want to focus on how to respectfully disagree. It's important in respectful disagreement that all members of the group adopt a collaborative mindset and approach disagreement as a shared problem to solve, not a personal battle to win. It's important that they use respectful language. Some examples include encouraging the use of I statements. Instead of saying, "That's wrong," they should try, "I'm not sure I understand that approach. Can you explain it a bit more?" It's important that they use respectful phrases like, "I see where you're coming from, but what if we looked at it from another angle? Can we explore another option together?" These options show respect for peers and help to move a discussion along so that consensus can be reached. It's important that students are always focused on their shared goal. They can return the conversation to the group's common objective. Which approach makes the best sense to meeting the assignment's criteria? Or how can we make sure that we're all proud of the final product? Are important questions to answer. It's important that they have an agreed upon resolution process. Instructors can encourage groups to vote when consensus isn't possible, or try both ideas in a trial form if that's feasible. And as a last resort, they might ask for feedback from the instructor or from another group. Next, students should be trained to make their feedback constructive. To be constructive, feedback should be specific and provide a balance of both positive attributes and negative criticisms. The focus should always be on the work, not on the person who submitted the work. When finding fault with a group member's work, it's important to provide suggestions, not just criticism. And students should always be asking questions that invite dialogue about points where there is some sort of disagreement. Time management and goal setting is crucial to group work. You can train your students to set SMART goals. Those are goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound for each phase of the group project. Students need to learn how to set individual and group deadlines that come before the actual due date to allow time for revision. They also need to learn to plan for setbacks. They need to anticipate common issues like illness or scheduling conflicts and build in buffer time. They should discuss in advance how the group will adapt or reassign work if a deadline is missed. Finally, you need to provide some training in conflict resolution. Introduce simple strategies like step back, reflect, and reframe. Step back means that students should pause before reacting. This might involve taking a breath, walking away briefly, or delaying a response until emotions have settled. This prevents impulsive, emotionally charged reactions and creates space to consider the situation more objectively. In reflection, students think about what happened from multiple perspectives, their own and other students. They should ask themselves what they're feeling and why. They should also ask what the other person might be experiencing and what assumptions everybody is making, especially with regard to intent. Following this protocol helps uncover the root conflict and encourages respect for differing perspectives. Finally, reframing occurs when everybody shifts from how they view the conflict, moving from blame to curiosity, from me versus them to us versus the problem. This opens the door to solutions and shared understanding while encouraging constructive conversation instead of defensiveness. Remember that it's important as the instructor not to dissolve groups just because of conflict. Conflict is expected and is part of what they're learning to deal with in group work. Even well-trained groups need structure and accountability, which makes managing group progress a must. A few effective strategies include negotiating a charter or contract within the group. You begin group work by having each team decide upon their rules for engagement. That is, what the members' obligations are to the group and the penalties that should be assigned for failing to meet them. This may include arriving prepared, being supportive of others, or committing to mutual respect. There should be assigned roles. Either the instructor or group members should divide tasks into different roles that allow a fair division of labor within the group. Some roles, like facilitator or timekeeper, should be rotated among group members to distribute the responsibility more evenly. Breaking the project into phases with deliverables along the way produces regular milestones. This helps identify problems early and reduces last-minute scrambling. Finally, using midpoint feedback can be very valuable. The use of short peer evaluations halfway through a project brings any concerns about group dynamics and interactions, as well as participation, to the surface and gives students a chance to adjust before the final grades are given. Our final consideration today is evaluating group and individual work. Assessment is where group work often breaks down, but it doesn't have to. A dual assessment strategy works best. First, evaluate the group work. Use a rubric focused on whether the group work demonstrates achievement of learning outcomes, whether there's content quality, coherence, and good integration of contributions. This makes the criteria very clear to the students so that they can meet your expectations. This group product should be a shared score. This reflects interdependence, which helps to make everybody invested in the success of the group. Next, evaluate the individual contributions. You can do this in a variety of different ways. I recommend a combination. Structured peer evaluations are great. Research has shown that peer ratings are reliable when the criteria are clear and tied to the behaviors of the members of the group. Add in individual reflections. These are brief write-ups where students describe their roles, what they learned, and how the group functioned. Some instructors use adjusted group grading, where the group score is weighted by the peer contribution scores. Others split the grade, 60% for group work, 40% for individual components. Whatever your method, be transparent from the start. Tell students how they'll be graded, what good collaboration looks like, and how to give and receive feedback constructively. Group work is not just a teaching strategy, it's professional training. It can improve learning while building the soft skills we want our students to develop, like communication, empathy, accountability, and resilience. Next week, I'll provide you with some ideas for different kinds of group activities that you can use in your classrooms. And that's this week's teaching tip, brought to you by the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning here at UWSP. Remember, at CITL, we offer support for course design, learning activities, assessment, and pedagogy. Visit our website to schedule a consultation today.